The Galactic Council chamber was never meant for panic. It was built for order, for calm voices and long debates that lasted for days. The hall was a giant circle, walls made of shining crystal, and above it a dome that showed the stars. Here, rulers of 20 worlds made their decisions. Here, they believed peace could be shaped. But on this day, peace was already broken. The stars on the dome burned red. Holograms of exploding ships filled the air, each one more terrifying than the last. The enemy had arrived like a storm, sudden and merciless. Their fleet cut through defenses as if they were nothing. Inside the chamber, fear spread like fire. One alien leader, tall with silver tendrils falling like hair, slammed her hand on the table. "They are too strong. We cannot fight them," she shouted. A reptilian leader with glowing yellow eyes snarled back, "If we surrender, they will kill us all anyway." Voices clashed louder and louder. Some screamed for weapons, others begged for talks, and some simply cried. The chamber was filled with the sound of despair. The great rulers of the galaxy, once so proud, now looked like children lost in the dark. But not all. At the very center table, a single human sat still. He wore plain clothes, black and simple. His hands rested calmly in front of him, his eyes fixed on the dome where ships burned. Unlike the others, he was not shouting. Unlike the others, he did not even look afraid. He only watched, quiet, steady, waiting. Many of the council members had doubted him before. They had whispered that humans were too young as a species, too wild, too dangerous to trust with peace. Yet Earth had insisted on sending him as their diplomat. Now, while the chamber fell apart, he sat calm, his silence louder than all the noise. And behind him stood something else. A shadow. It did not move, did not speak. It looked almost like a guard, tall and cloaked, but there was something unnatural about its stillness. Its very presence seemed heavy, pressing against the air. Those who noticed it felt a strange chill crawl across their skin, as if their hearts had skipped a beat. The bird-like leader with golden feathers leaned toward her neighbor and whispered, "What is that behind him?" The neighbor, a small creature with glowing blue skin, shook his head nervously. "Not a guard," he muttered. "Something worse." Before more could be said, the dome above changed again. The second line of defense was gone. Enemy ships were breaking into orbit. The council guards shouted into comms, but the answers came only as screams. The reptilian leader slammed his fists against the table. "We are finished. We must run." "Run where?" shouted another. "They are already here." Chaos grew louder. Orders mixed with cries of fear. No one listened to each other anymore. The chamber, built to hold reason, now shook with madness. And still, the human did not move. Finally, one leader, desperate and furious, pointed at him. His voice cracked as he shouted, "Human, you sit there while the galaxy burns? Do you feel nothing?" The human turned his head slowly. His eyes, cold and sharp, swept across the chamber. Then, with a voice steady as stone, he answered, "Fear changes nothing. Panic changes nothing. The enemy is at your door, and you waste your time screaming." His words cut through the chaos. For a moment, the chamber grew silent. Even the most fearful turned to look at him. His calmness was unsettling, almost frightening. The human leaned forward slightly. "You think this is the end," he said. "But you are wrong." Then, for the first time, the shadow behind him moved. It was only a small step forward, but it was enough. The sound of armor brushing against the floor echoed louder than all the shouting had before. Every eye turned. The shadow lifted its head, and for a moment, glowing eyes flickered from the darkness beneath the hood. The bird-like leader gasped. A chill filled the chamber, sharp and heavy, like a storm about to break. The human spoke again, his voice softer now, but it carried to every ear. "You believed Earth was weak. You believed humanity was reckless. But what stands with me today is proof of what you never understood." The shadow shifted again, and the nearest guards froze in place. Their weapons shook in their hands, yet none dared raise them. Even the bravest of the council leaders leaned back in fear. It was not a soldier. It was not a machine. It was something else. Something that felt like death itself had taken form and chosen to stand beside a human. The chamber was silent now. Outside, ships still burned. Inside, rulers sat frozen, trapped between fear and awe. And in that silence, the council realized something far worse than the enemy fleet. Death was already in the room, quiet, patient, waiting, standing beside the human diplomat. The silence after the human's words did not last long. The council chamber was full of fear, and fear always found a voice. The silver-haired alien with tendrils rising from her head leaned forward, her voice sharp and full of anger. "This is why we never wanted a human here. You do not belong in this chamber. Your world is too young, too reckless, too violent. What can Earth teach us about peace?" Several others nodded quickly, eager to throw blame away from themselves. It was easier to attack the human than to admit their own helplessness. The reptilian leader hissed, "The humans should never have been given a seat at this table. We warned you all. They bring danger wherever they go." The bird-like alien with golden feathers added softly, "He does not even fear death. That is not natural." Whispers spread across the hall. Some spoke of Earth's short history, others of its endless wars. To them, humans were dangerous not because they were strong, but because they were unpredictable. The galaxy had seen mighty species rise and fall, but humans were different. They had a stubbornness that no one could understand. The human diplomat listened without a single change in his face. He let them speak, let their anger pour out, let their fear find him as its target. His calmness only made them more uneasy. Finally, when the voices began to fade, he spoke. "You think I am the danger here?" he asked quietly. His words were slow, steady, carrying across the chamber. "You think my presence brings death? Then tell me, who is it burning your fleets outside? Who is it breaking your defenses while you shout at each other? Is it the human, or the enemy you refuse to face?" The room fell silent again. The human leaned back in his chair, his dark eyes moving from face to face. "You called me reckless. You called Earth unfit for this council. Yet I am the only one in this room who is not screaming. Perhaps you should ask yourselves why." The shadow behind him shifted again, only slightly, but that slight movement was enough to remind them all it was still there. Its silent presence pressed against their hearts like a weight. None dared meet its gaze. One leader, an ancient being whose body was made of living crystal, spoke in a slow, trembling voice. "What is that behind you, human? Is this your guard? Your weapon?" The human diplomat turned his head slightly, almost as if he was amused. "It is not for you to understand," he said. "But know this, it stands with me. And when humanity is threatened, it does not forgive." A murmur of unease spread through the chamber. The council members exchanged glances, their fear mixing with suspicion. The silver-haired alien shouted again, desperate now. "This is proof. Humans are not diplomats, they are conquerors. Even in this hall of peace, you bring a creature of death." But the human's voice cut through her cries, calm and cold. "Peace?" he asked. "You speak of peace now? While your enemies burn your skies. Peace is not kept by words alone. Peace must be protected. And when you are too weak to defend it, someone must do it for you." The holograms above changed once more. Enemy ships were now descending toward the planet. Fire streaked across the skies. The chamber shook as explosions echoed from the surface. Panic returned, louder this time. Leaders shouted for evacuation. Guards tried to form lines. Some began to argue over which world should be sacrificed first. The human diplomat stood slowly. For the first time, his calm voice grew sharp. "Enough!" The single word echoed, stronger than the screams. The chamber froze. He looked at them all, his face like stone. "You do not want me here. You do not trust humanity. That is fine. But remember this, while you argue and cry, the enemy does not wait. They are coming for you. They will tear down your worlds one by one. And when you beg for mercy, they will give you none." The shadow stepped forward now, fully visible in the dim light. It was tall, armored, its glowing eyes burning faintly. The air grew heavy as if the chamber itself held its breath. The human placed one hand on the table and said, "You call me unwanted. You call Earth reckless. But you will learn this truth. Humanity is the last ally you should ever turn away. Because when death itself walks beside us, we do not lose." The chamber was silent again, but it was a different silence now. Not just fear, but realization. The council members, proud rulers of many worlds, looked at the human with new eyes. He was still unwanted, still distrusted, but now he was also undeniable. For the first time, they began to wonder. Perhaps Earth was not too reckless. Perhaps it was too dangerous to ignore. And as the shadow's glowing eyes swept slowly across the chamber, each of them felt the same cold thought. Humanity had brought something into their hall that no other world could. Something they did not understand. Something they could not control. Something they might one day need. The holographic dome above the council chamber flickered with fire. Red and orange light spilled across the floor as enemy ships pierced the last defense line. The entire planet shook from distant explosions. For the first time in 1,000 years, the heart of the Galactic Council was under direct attack. A desperate voice screamed over the comms, echoing through the chamber. "Shields collapsing. The fleet is gone. The enemy is inside the atmosphere." The words crushed whatever hope remained. The council chamber erupted into madness. Leaders shouted for their guards. Some ran toward the exits. Others froze in despair. The voices rose together, fear louder than any weapon. The human diplomat stood still. His dark eyes stayed on the burning skies above. His calmness was strange, terrifying even. While others trembled, he seemed to be waiting for this exact moment. Then the doors of the great chamber shook. A deep boom echoed as metal bent under pressure. Guards rushed to form a line, weapons raised, but their hands were shaking. The alien leaders backed away, their cries filling the air. The reptilian leader screamed, "They have breached the walls! The council is finished." The human finally moved. He turned his head slightly, his expression unreadable. He whispered two words, so soft they were almost lost in the chaos. "Not yet." The shadow behind him stirred. It stepped forward, its tall armored form gliding like a storm given shape. Its glowing eyes flashed once, and the air grew cold. The guards nearest to it felt their knees weaken. Even the bravest of them looked away. Something inside told them that to stare too long would invite death itself. Another crash shook the doors. This time, the great entrance cracked. Through the split, strange figures appeared enemy soldiers. They were tall, their armor black and jagged, their weapons glowing with cruel energy. The chamber filled with screams. The first wave of enemy soldiers broke through, their heavy steps shaking the floor. They raised their weapons toward the council. The leaders cowered, shields of words and status useless against real fire. But before a single shot was fired, the shadow moved. It was fast, too fast. One moment it stood by the human, the next it was among the enemy. Blades of black light flashed. The first 3 soldiers fell without even knowing what had cut them. The rest fired, but the bolts of energy bent strangely, missing their mark as if the air itself twisted to protect the shadow. The alien leaders gasped, their fear mixing with awe. The human diplomat watched without flinching. His calm voice cut through the screams and the sound of battle. "You wanted proof of humanity's strength. You are seeing it now." The shadow struck again. It moved like smoke, like water, like death given form. Enemy soldiers fell one by one, their armor splitting, their weapons clattering uselessly to the floor. The glowing eyes of the shadow burned brighter with every strike. But the enemy was endless. More poured through the broken doors, shouting in their harsh language. The chamber echoed with the clash of metal, the roar of weapons, the cries of the wounded. The floor shook as explosions hit closer outside. The council members huddled together, their guards trying to protect them, but none could deny the truth. The only real protection in this chamber came from the shadow. The bird-like alien with golden feathers whispered in horror. "What is it? No soldier moves like that. No creature fights like that." The human turned his head slightly toward her. His voice was low, steady. It is what stands with humanity. That is all you need to know. Another wave of enemies stormed in. The shadow lifted both arms, and for the first time, the chamber shook not from explosions outside, but from power within. The lights flickered. The air grew heavy. A ripple of invisible force shot outward, and the enemy soldiers were thrown back as if crushed by unseen hands. The alien rulers stared, their fear now mixed with something else, respect. They had mocked the human. They had doubted his people. But now, in the face of death, it was the human's shadow that stood between survival and annihilation. The reptilian leader whispered, trembling, This is what humanity calls a diplomat? The human looked at him, his expression calm, almost cold. This is what humanity sends when words are no longer enough. The enemy tried again, pouring more soldiers into the chamber. But each step they took was answered by the shadow's wrath. Blades flashed, bodies fell, screams echoed. The floor grew slick with the signs of battle. Yet the human never moved from his place. He stood still, his hands clasped calmly behind his back, as if this storm of death was only another negotiation, one where the outcome had already been decided. Outside, the skies burned. Inside, the council realized something they had never wanted to admit. The human was not just a diplomat. He was a warning, and with death itself standing beside him, that warning was clear. Humanity was not to be underestimated. The chamber smelled of smoke and fear. Sparks fell from broken lights, and the once bright floor was stained with the marks of battle. Enemy soldiers lay scattered across the ground, their black armor cracked, their weapons useless. Yet, despite the chaos, the human diplomat stood exactly where he had begun. Calm, steady, untouched. But everyone's eyes were no longer on him. They were on the shadow. The tall figure moved with a silence that was not natural. Each step was slow, controlled, almost graceful, but carried the weight of something otherworldly. Its armor was dark, like metal forged in places without light. The glowing eyes beneath its hood burned faintly, not like lamps, but like embers of a fire that could never die. The alien leaders trembled. Even the bravest guards dared not lift their weapons. Something inside them screamed that to resist this figure would mean instant death. The reptilian leader whispered, his voice breaking, What is it? Is it human? Is it machine? The human diplomat did not answer. His expression was calm, as if the question did not matter. The shadow finally stopped in the center of the chamber. For a moment, the silence was so heavy that even the sound of the burning skies outside faded. Every being in the room felt it, the weight of something ancient, something they could not understand. Then the doors burst open again. A fresh wave of enemy soldiers stormed in, their roars shaking the walls. Blasters fired, energy bolts cut through the smoke. One council guard tried to stand his ground, but he was thrown back instantly. The leaders screamed again, their fear returning like a flood. The shadow moved. It did not rush, it did not stumble. It stepped forward with the calm of death itself. And then, in one motion, it struck. The nearest soldier never even raised his weapon. His body fell in two clean pieces before anyone saw the blade. Another aimed and fired, but the bolt bent in the air, missing its target. The shadow's hand cut through his armor like it was paper. Panic spread among the invaders. They tried to retreat, but the doors were already closed behind them. The shadow's movements were precise, almost beautiful in their terror. Each strike ended a life. Each step left another body behind. The alien leaders watched with wide eyes. None of them spoke now. Their voices were trapped in their throats. This was not a soldier. They had seen soldiers before. This was something else. Something unstoppable. The bird-like alien with golden feathers clutched her chest, her voice barely a whisper. It does not fight like a living thing, the crystal-bodied elder, trembling, added. It fights like death itself. The human diplomat finally spoke, his voice calm and quiet, yet echoing in every corner of the chamber. Now you see, you doubted humanity. You called us reckless, unfit, unworthy. But we are not what you imagined. We do not stand alone. Another soldier screamed as the shadow's glowing eyes turned toward him. He fired wildly, but his shots disappeared in the smoke. The next moment he was silent forever. The alien leaders could not look away. Some shook their heads, others covered their faces, but all of them knew a truth they could never erase from memory. The human had not come alone. He had brought death with him. The shadow returned to the human side, its armor still dripping with the battle it had finished. Stood tall, silent, waiting. Not a word passed from its lips. Not a sound came from its breathing. It was as if it existed only to serve. The human turned toward the council. His calm gaze swept over them. "You asked what it is," he said slowly. "You called it unnatural. Perhaps it is. But it is mine. And where I walk, it walks. Where humanity is threatened, it rises." Silence followed. None of the council members dared to respond. They had mocked the human earlier, called him unwanted, dangerous. Now they understood that dangerous had not been an insult. It was the truth. Outside, explosions still shook the skies. But inside, another kind of war had already been decided. The enemy could bring fleets, armies, weapons beyond imagination. None of it mattered, because the shadow was here. And with every heartbeat, the alien leaders began to realize the same thing. Humanity had just changed the balance of the galaxy. Not with ships, not with numbers, with the quiet presence of death itself. The human diplomat sat back down slowly, his hands calm, his face untouched by the chaos around him. The shadow stood at his shoulder, still as stone, but its glowing eyes continued to sweep the chamber. Every alien who felt that gaze turned cold inside. The human leaned forward, his voice soft, almost like a whisper, but it carried like thunder. "Now tell me again," he said. "Am I unwanted here?" Not a single leader answered. The chamber was no longer filled with noise. Where once there had been shouting, arguing, and panic, now there was silence. The floor was littered with the remains of enemy soldiers. Their weapons lay broken, their black armor cracked open like empty shells. Smoke drifted from the great doors where they had entered. And in the middle of it all, the human diplomat sat back down in his chair. His hands rested gently on the table, his face calm, almost relaxed. It was as if nothing had happened. The alien leaders could not understand it. Their hearts still pounded, their hands still shook. Some struggled to breathe. They had seen death move across the chamber, swift and merciless. They had watched soldiers stronger than any of their own fall in seconds. Yet the human acted as if this storm of blood had been a simple conversation. The silver-haired alien with tendrils finally broke the silence. Her voice was hoarse. You command that thing? That shadow?" The human did not look at her. His eyes remained on the glowing dome above, where flames consumed the skies of the planet. "It does not need command," he said softly. "It understands." The words sent a chill through the chamber. The reptilian leader leaned forward, his scales trembling. "You sit here calmly while the galaxy burns. Do you feel nothing? Do you not understand the danger we face?" The human turned to him, his gaze cold, his voice steady. "Of course I understand. But fear is not a weapon. Fear cannot save your worlds. Calm is power. Panic only feeds your enemies." The words struck harder than any blade. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. They realized that while they had screamed and argued, the human had already won something they had lost long ago. Control. Another explosion shook the chamber, louder this time. Dust fell from the ceiling. Outside, the comms screamed with warnings. Enemy troops landing near the city. Civilian areas breached. The alien leaders began to panic again, rising to their feet, shouting orders to guards who were too afraid to listen. But the human raised one hand, not in anger, not in desperation, simply raised it. The noise stopped. He spoke slowly, his words measured, as if each one was chosen carefully. "You sit in the highest chamber of the galaxy. You call yourselves leaders. Yet when danger comes, you argue like frightened children. You want peace? Then you must earn it. Not with words alone, but with resolve. The shadow at his side shifted slightly, its glowing eyes sweeping across the room. Every leader who met its gaze felt their chest tighten. It was not just fear anymore, it was obedience. The crystal-bodied elder spoke in a trembling voice. Why does it obey you? What are you to it? The human leaned forward, his face calm, his tone almost gentle. It does not obey me. It walks with me. Humanity has learned one truth the rest of you forget. Peace is not free. Someone must stand ready to pay the cost. That is why it is here. The chamber was quiet again, but not because of fear alone. The leaders listened now. For the first time, they were hearing the human not as an intruder, not as an unwanted guest, but as someone who carried a truth they had ignored. The bird-like alien with golden feathers whispered, "You came here as a diplomat, but you are something more." The human's eyes softened, though his voice remained steady. "A diplomat seeks peace, but peace is not a dream, it is a shield. And shields must be strong or they shatter." The words sank deep into every heart. Outside, the enemy continued to strike. The skies burned brighter, the comms filled with desperate reports. Yet inside the chamber, something had changed. The leaders still feared death, still trembled before the shadow, but now they also felt something else. Respect. They looked at the human differently now. Not as an outsider, not as a reckless child of Earth, but as a figure who had shown them strength when they had none. The reptilian leader, who had been the loudest critic, finally lowered his head. His voice was quiet, almost humbled. "Then tell us, human, what do we do?" The human diplomat leaned back, his calm expression never breaking. "First," he said, "you stop running. You stop screaming. You stop pretending that peace is a gift someone else will protect for you. You fight for it. And if you cannot fight, then stand behind those who can." The shadow's eyes glowed brighter, as if agreeing. The human placed both hands on the table, steady and firm. "The enemy thinks you are weak. That is why they came here. But tonight, they will learn a new truth. The galaxy is not weak because humanity stands among you now. And where we stand, we do not fall." The chamber was silent once more, but this silence was not only fear. It was the silence of something awakening, hope mixed with awe. The human diplomat sat in calmness, as death itself waited at his side. And for the first time, the council began to believe. The council chamber was no longer only a place of fear. Yes, the smell of smoke still hung in the air. Yes, the bodies of enemy soldiers still lay scattered across the floor. Yes, the sound of war still echoed from the skies above. But something in the hearts of the alien leaders had shifted. For the first time, they were not only afraid of the human diplomat and the shadow that stood at his side. They were beginning to see them differently. The silver-haired alien with tendrils, who had been shouting against the human since the beginning, lowered her voice now. She looked at the human with eyes still uncertain, but no longer filled with hate. You did not run when we all did. You did not cry when we all panicked. You stood. Why?" The human diplomat leaned forward slightly. His voice was calm, simple, steady. "Because fear solves nothing. You do not respect a leader who cries. You do not follow one who hides. If humanity is to survive, if this council is to survive, we must face danger with eyes open." The reptilian leader, who once hissed against him, now nodded slowly. His sharp claws tapped against the table. Perhaps humanity is not as reckless as we believed. Perhaps it is simply braver." The bird-like alien with golden feathers, her voice soft, added, "No, not braver. Stronger. You brought death with you, but you control it. We could not even control our own fear." The shadow shifted slightly, its glowing eyes sweeping across the chamber. The leaders shivered again, but this time the shiver was different. It was not the terror of prey before a predator. It was the awe of soldiers before a commander. Another explosion shook the ceiling, dust falling like rain. The comms screamed again. Civilian districts falling. Enemy spreading fast. The alien leaders looked to each other, fear threatening to return. But then their eyes turned toward the human. He was still calm, still steady. He was their anchor in the storm. The crystal-bodied elder spoke in his deep, trembling voice. Human, we mocked you, we doubted you, we pushed you aside. Yet here, in this hour, you stand stronger than us all. Tell us, then, what do we do now? The chamber fell silent, waiting for his answer. The human diplomat rose slowly to his feet. The shadow followed, its tall armored form casting a dark presence across the chamber. His voice carried not as a shout, but with a weight that pulled every ear to him. You respect words, he said, but words will not save you. You respect treaties, but treaties mean nothing to those who come to kill. Respect is not given in times like these, it is taken. Tonight, we show them why the council still stands. The reptilian leader bowed his head slightly. And you, human? What do you ask of us? The human's gaze swept the chamber, steady and cold. I ask you to fight, not with fear, not with despair. Fight with whatever strength you have left. If you cannot fight with weapons, then fight with resolve. Because the moment you give up, you are already dead. The shadow's glowing eyes flared brighter, as if echoing his words. One by one, the council leaders straightened. Their voices, once full of panic, now grew steady. The silver-haired alien clenched her fists. My fleets are broken, but not destroyed. I will call the remnants. They will fight again. The bird-like alien lifted her head, feathers shaking. My people are afraid, but if they see me stand, they will stand too. The crystal elder's body glowed faintly as he nodded. Then we shall rise together. If humanity can bring death itself to our side, perhaps we can bring courage back to ours. The human diplomat gave a small nod. Then there is hope, not because of me, not because of humanity, but because you choose to fight. Fear no longer controls you. That is the first step. For the first time since the attack began, the chamber no longer felt like a prison of fear. Felt like a place of resolve. The leaders still looked at the shadow with unease. They still felt its weight pressing on their hearts. But now that weight was no longer only terror. It was protection. It was strength. Respect had taken root. The human sat once more, his calm presence wrapping the chamber like a shield. The shadow stood silently beside him, still and patient, like a sword waiting to be drawn again. The war outside was not over. The enemy was still strong, still merciless. But inside the council chamber, something important had changed. For the first time, the alien leaders did not see the human as a reckless stranger. They saw him as the figure they would follow. And in the silence that followed, they understood a truth that would echo across the stars. Fear breaks empires. Respect builds them. And now they respected humanity. The chamber was quiet, almost too quiet. The walls still shook from distant explosions, and the sky above still burned red with fire. Yet inside, a strange calm had fallen. The alien leaders sat in silence, their faces pale but their eyes no longer filled with blind panic. They were watching one man, the human diplomat, and the shadow that stood behind him. The human rose slowly from his seat. His steps were steady, unhurried. The weight of the chamber seemed to shift with his movement, as though the air itself leaned closer to hear his words. The shadow followed him, silent as ever, its glowing eyes like two stars in the darkness. When he reached the center of the hall, he stopped. His calm gaze swept across every leader. Then, with a voice quiet but heavy as stone, he spoke. You feared humanity. You mocked us. You called us reckless and unworthy. But tonight you saw the truth. Humanity does not come alone. Where we walk, death walks beside us. And those who dare strike us, they do not live long enough to strike again. The reptilian leader, who once hissed in anger at him, lowered his head. His voice was quiet now, almost respectful. We see it. We know it. None of us will forget what happened here. The silver-haired alien, still trembling but steadier than before, asked in a weak voice, Then tell us, human, what will you do now? The human diplomat's eyes grew colder, sharper. What I will do does not matter. What you will do does. Tonight, the enemy has learned what happens when they attack this council. They thought you were weak. They thought you would fall. And they were almost right. But humanity stood, and so you still live. The council chamber was silent again. None could deny his words. The bird-like alien with golden feathers leaned forward, her voice a whisper. And if they return? If they bring more fleets, more soldiers? What then? The human turned his gaze upward toward the burning dome above. For a long moment he said nothing. Then his voice came, softer than before but carrying through every corner of the hall. Then they will learn the final truth. The shadow's glowing eyes flared, brighter than before. Its armored body shifted, heavy and cold. Every leader felt their hearts freeze again. The human continued. The final truth is simple. You can break fleets. You can destroy planets. You can even erase worlds. But you cannot break humanity. We are stubborn. We rise again and again, stronger each time. And if you force us to rise as enemies. He paused. The chamber waited, every breath caught in silence. Then you will not survive our return. The words hit like thunder. Some of the council leaders shivered, others bowed their heads. It was not only a promise. It was a warning carved in stone. The crystal-bodied elder, glowing faintly in the smoke, spoke with a voice both fearful and respectful. You speak as if humanity is more than a world, more than a people. The human's eyes narrowed slightly. Perhaps we are. Perhaps what you saw tonight is not just my shadow. Perhaps it is what waits in all of us when we are pushed too far. You call us reckless, but you will learn, we are relentless. The chamber fell quiet again. The leaders looked to one another, but no one spoke. None dared break the moment. The human turned slowly, beginning to walk toward the shattered doors. The shadow followed, silent, tall and terrible. With each step, the chamber seemed darker, heavier. At the threshold, the human stopped and looked back one last time. His voice was low, calm, final. Remember this night. Remember what stood here beside you. Respect humanity, and we will stand as allies. But betray us, doubt us, or raise arms against us. The shadow stepped forward, its eyes glowing like fire in the smoke. And death will return to your halls. No one answered. No one moved. The alien leaders sat frozen, their fear and respect bound together. The human turned back and walked into the smoke-filled corridor, the shadow gliding silently at his side. Together they disappeared into the chaos of the burning city. And in the council chamber, the rulers of 20 worlds finally understood. Humanity was no longer a young, reckless species. Humanity had become a force the galaxy could not ignore. Not because of fleets, not because of weapons, because death itself walked beside them.